Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're dialing in from. I do appreciate you joining us today. Today's topic for the webinar is on modeling site-specific safety and reliability, which we call the Site Safety Index. My name is Ted Stewart. For some of you that do not know me, I see some new people on this line. I feel like every time I do a webinar, we have new people, which is great. I am the Program Development and Compliance Manager with Exida. I wear a lot of different hats. I am the OEM product certification manager. I also help the end user business. I manage the CFSC program, and I'm also the deputy quality manager. So it's quite nice to have the versatility to be able to see a lot of the different assets of our company and to be able to help and improve where I see fit. Like we do with most of our webinars, we'll discuss a few, just 3 or 4 slides about who Exida is, and then we'll jump into the topic that everyone came on board for. Exida, we are a worldwide location. You'll see here on the map in front of you. We are next year going to, well, we believe so, as long as everything works out right. We're going to be actually opening another office out, which you'll hear more about closer to 2016. We can't release any information at this time, but it's very exciting to know that we are growing. We're growing extremely fast, and we're doing everything right. Feels great. Who Exida is? Well, here's a slide here. You can see that we do touch different realms. We have OEM business, we have end user business, automotive, nuclear. We have alarm management. Another one that's getting rather large is cybersecurity, and we'll touch a little bit about that, but I'll make sure to not go on too many tangents here. So here we go. This is the main product in the suite of services that Exida does offer. For those that don't know, we do offer consulting in many different standards. Some of here there aren't even listed. I know one of the newer ones for this year that we just got accredited was for railroad. We also have engineering tools. One of the favorites is Excellencia. Many people benefit from that. You'll see all the way through. Basically, anything you can think of in functional safety, we've developed a software tool to help you not worry about those equations. We also have product certification, which is kind of our bread and butter, whether it's in 61508, if it's machine safety, if it's in agriculture, if it's 61511, cybersecurity certification. We're starting to touch a lot of different areas. We have trainings. We have one training every single week somewhere in the world, which is very exciting. We have published the most reference materials to date in functional safety. Our biggest thing that we always tell people, and I know you've heard me say this before, if we know it, we're going to tell you about it. We don't try and hold any information in. We want to tell the masses. We want to tell as many people as possible, because why? We're a safety company. If we kept things from you and it could have helped you in the future with your site, with your plant, with your daily activities, we want you to know about it. We're not going to make you come and pay us for it. Hence why we do free webinars every Wednesday. We write all the white papers. Anything that you guys have an issue with, we try to address to the best of our accuracy. We also have the personnel certification program, which is the CFSC and CFSP program. Within that program, there's different ways to become certified, whether you do it in automotive, CAC, which is your cybersecurity. You have hardware, machinery, process, and also software. And we're about to get started with all the meat of this webinar today, but I do want you to know that on your toolbar there that's in front of you, we have a question area. So if you do have a question, please write it down, ask it away, and towards the end, I will answer all those questions. I'll also, I'll also ask the questions that were from this morning. I wrote them down so that you can hear those questions and what the answer was as well. Okay, so today's webinar, it's going to be on the failure rate difference. Okay, the first slide here, failure rate difference from site to site. Okay, so during a study of field returns in the late 1990s, it was discovered that the return rate for identical modules was 4 times different from one site to another in the same industry. Okay, so what happened was some failures were obviously due to systematic problems, where untrained people were damaging equipment during the proof test process, which we all can understand. I'm sure some of you have been there when something like that has happened. However, Let's hope it doesn't happen often. However, when those systematic failures were removed from this data, so we didn't count them, we still saw roughly a 2 times difference in failure rate for the same device from site to site. Okay, so since then, there was a 1998 study. Several other field failure studies from a number of different sources have indicated that there's also a difference in failure rates for the same product from site to site. Typically, the ratio is averaged between 1.2 and 2 times difference depending on the product type. Hence why we started this webinar today. We're noticing this more and more. We actually just got back from a site for an end user, and they were boggled. They said, why is this happening? And so we said, you know what? We need to create this webinar. We need to tell more people about this. And yes, today's webinar is focused towards the end users. However, manufacturers who are on this call, you also benefit from it because you'll see what they have to go through and how they can achieve a more accurate PFD average to hit whatever SIL rating they're trying to achieve. Okay, and one of those ways is the site audits have shown many differences in how things are done from site to site, and that's what becomes very interesting on today's discussion. So what's the impact? A key metric for process industry designs is called your average probability of failure on demand, which we call the PFD average. Many of you have heard it. Many people have had to calculate this. If you're like me, I use Excelentia. So after several studies of many field failure and proof test reports, several variables have been identified as a key to a realistic PFD average calculation. And I put that star there just so you can look at the bottom of that screen there. We actually just put on our website a new white paper. If you want to learn more about this topic and the many other topics that can help, or not can help, but that can change your PFD calculation, this is a paper you need to read. It's short, quick read. You'll definitely, it's an easy read too. You'll definitely understand and learn a lot from it, like I did. Dr. Goebel and Iwan van Buren were the ones who wrote this paper, so it's very well done. Let's get back on topic though. It is shown that the exclusion of these parameters may result in an optimistic metric calculation, which may result in an unsafe design. And that's very important to know that a lot of people don't think about, they might just do the calculation, but they don't think about the other variables that are associated when you want to calculate an accurate PFD average calculation. Now this webinar identifies the key variables that need to be included in this PFD average calculation and a model for including the impact of site-to-site variations. Today, we're going to be more so going over the Site Safety Index, which is called the SSI. For a lot of you, you may have already heard this term, but I say for a good chunk, this is a newer term, so that's another reason why we went to hold a webinar on this and also create that white paper right away so that you can have access to it and can refer to it. All right, PFD average. There's 9 key variables. Today we're only going to be speaking about number 8, the Site Safety Index, but let's read through these here because it's an interesting thing to point out. The failure rates of each product, including failure modes and any diagnostic coverage from automatic diagnostics. Okay, that's one key variable. You have mission time. You have proof test intervals, proof test effectiveness, proof test duration, mean time to restore, probability of initial failure, Site Safety Index, and finally redundancy of devices including common cause failures. Now what is one thing when you're looking at this list that points out or that you notice? Well, the first thing I noticed was, let's take a look at this. Look at the items in red. Okay, failure rates of each product including failure modes, mission time, proof test intervals, proof test effectiveness, proof test duration, mean time to restore, and probability of failure, initial failure. These are all impacted by the site practices. All of these. And these are some things that may or may not get looked at. So why is this important? The key variables in a PFD calculation are impacted by site operational practices. A model can show this impact and can be used to show the benefit of improved operational processes. Now, the Site Safety Index is an additional input to the PFD calculation, which shows the impact. Okay, and that's what we want to talk about today is how do you show this impact? How can you rate something like this? How can you go in there and figure out, well, how much do I reduce the PFD average? Can I increase it if I do a really great job? Well, here's the Site Safety Index model. Okay, so you'll notice here there's 5 levels of Site Safety Index from Excellentia. You have SSI 4 all the way down to SSI 0. I'll briefly read through these, the different levels, and you can see how they slightly change as you go through. Really, when you're looking at until you get to the bottom there, I mean, they're all pretty good ratings as far as the descriptions are concerned. So you'll see for perfect, obviously, you have your repairs are always correctly performed. Testing is always done correctly. It's always on schedule. Equipment is always replaced for the end of useful life. And I'm going to challenge you guys when you're going through this. You know, if you are an end user, think about that. You know, are you replacing these, or do you normally replace it? And kind of think where would you fall just off the hip? You know, are you almost perfect? Where repairs are correctly performed, okay? Testing is done correctly. It's on schedule. And the equipment is replaced before end of life, useful life. Okay. What about good? Repairs are correctly performed. Testing is done correctly. It's mostly on schedule. And most equipment is replaced before the end of useful life. What about medium? Okay, repairs are often correctly performed, testing is done, and mostly on schedule, and some equipment is replaced before the end of life, useful life. And then finally, none. Repairs aren't performed, testing is not done, equipment is not replaced until a failure. Excuse me. So, where do you fall on something like this? Well, we do ask questions to help give this rating, to help figure out where you are if you're an SSI 4, SSI 3, 2, 1, 0. So what kind of questions are asked when looking into something like this? Well, there are several factors that have been identified thus far which impact the Site Safety Index. These of which are the quality, this include the quality of. Okay, so we're looking at quality of your commission test, the quality of your safety validation test, the proof test procedures, the quality of your proof test documentation, failure diagnostic and repair procedures, device useful life tracking, and replacement process. We also look at the SIS modification procedures, SIS decommissioning procedures, and yes, there are many others, and in which we're not going to speak all about today, so we decided to select 5 of them. All right, and you'll see that in the next slide, which 5 we selected, and then we'll talk a little bit about each one. So here's the evaluation step. We have site audits. What happens is the best method would be this site audit, and it would be against an expanded version of IEC 61511. An experienced safety process engineer will ask a series of questions in different categories. It will review these procedures. It will do an audit. It will document. It will audit the documentation produced, and then there will be a score and the results. And also a result. You will score the results in a detailed report along with the recommendations for improvement. Okay, that's all well and good, but what if you need something really quick and you want to figure something out sooner than later? Well, we can also do a simple questionnaire. This can also provide the initial results. Yes, it has less accuracy, but at least you'll kind of get a benchmark of where you currently are. So here are the 5 categories for the Site Safety Index that we're going to talk about today. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to go through a series of these questions. That was the biggest thing that people came to us. Well, yes, I understand that there's a Site Safety Index, but what are these kind of questions? What can I be looked for? And so that's what I wanted to create today. I wanted to tell people briefly about what it is and then kind of go through questions. No, I'm not going to read all of them. And as there's the slides, it's going to be a brief amount of questions too. However, I did want to touch on them so you can kind of see what to expect in each one of these 5 categories. And here's something fun to do. As you're listening, think about it. Well, do I always do that one? Do I often? Do I never? Or does that one not even apply to me? Because what happens is, depending on these types of responses, there's a weighted scoring system that adds up the points for each question and answer. And then the resulting score is evaluated per the 5 ranges that provide the SSI number, right? And that was this right here. So then these numbers get added up, and then you achieve a certain level. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and let's start looking into some questions about SIS, installation, and commissioning. I'm not going to read all of them because each subject probably has about 4 slides worth of these questions. Yes, there's more questions than that, but I wanted to put enough down on these slides so that you can now reference these, since everybody gets a copy of these slides, and they can now even ask their own questions if you are an end user. So the first one here is, does your site do a plan that includes all activities required for installation and commissioning? Let's say, do your commissioning activities include confirming the earthing, which is grounding, and has it been properly connected? Do your commissioning activities include confirming and documenting all field devices are operational and calibrated? Think about these things, because a lot of these questions get overlooked. One on here is, do your commissioning activities include confirming that the diagnostic alarms are properly received by the maintenance workstation? An obvious one would be, well, do you have good documentation of all commissioning activities? See, the one thing that people are going to find out when we do these things, and when we do site audits, is a lot of these great companies, they rely on their personnel, their employees so much. They have employees there that have been around for 10, 20, 30, 40, 45, 47 years. That was their first and only job. They hung on there because why? The benefits are great and they love their company. What happens when you have something like that? You have pros and cons, because one, this individual has everything memorized. They know exactly how to manufacture. They know exactly how to build a system, right? And so they buy all the products that are already certified, and they put these systems together. But are they even following a documentation, or are they really just going from memory? And then when you cross-train people, is he cross-training per his procedure, or is he cross-training per his memory? And so we'll notice that there's a lot of people that know the good practices and know how to do everything, know all the commissioning activities. However, is it written down? And as I go through here, think, well, do I have that written down somewhere? Does my company have that procedure? Okay, so now let's go into SIS safety validation. Does your SIS validation planning include all operating modes? For example, do you have a startup one, an automatic, a maintenance, a semi-automatic, even steady state? Does your SIS validation plan include a pass-fail criteria, including the required process and operator input signals with their sequences and their values? Do your SIS validation activities include confirmation that the adverse interaction of the basic process control system and other connected systems do not affect the proper operations of the SIS? Some might not know, and that's what's kind of neat, is because we're going to supply all these questions, you can now go and find out these answers. Let's go for a few more here. Do your validation activities confirm that all equipment is operating within the environmental limits as specified in the safety requirements specification? Most people call that an SRS. That's a little more heard of. Oh, and let me go back to that first question right here. Do your validation activities include confirmation that the SIS is properly protected against cybersecurity attacks? That one, most people kind of put up that question mark. They think so. They feel pretty confident. I mean, why would you have a system like that? But here's the reality. You're going to purchase and spend this money on buying certified products. You're going to put it into a system. But do you have anything to protect yourself? Yeah, that might be still too capable, this system. However, what if someone else is controlling this package, this valve actuator package or anything? You know, that still capability rating, whatever it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, it means nothing if someone else is controlling it. So keep that in mind. Do your validation activities include testing that sensors, logic solvers, and final elements perform in accordance with the safety requirement specification, including all redundant channels? All right, let's go through a couple more here. Do your validation activities verify that diagnostic alarms from SIS devices are properly enunciated to repair personnel? And do your validation activities confirm that the SIS performs as required on loss of utilities? For example, when you lose power, or if you lose maybe your air conditioning in there to help, and confirmation that when these utilities are restored, is the SIS, does it return to the desired state? I don't know how many people have tested that. Is that a normal test? Great. If it's not, it's something to think about. Do your SIS validation results include documentation of any discrepancy between expected and actual results? Do you even document that? Do you remove all forces and force enables after the SIS validation and prior to the identification hazards are being present? Okay, and like I said, there's a lot of questions in here. I'm trying to skim through them, and there's even more questions when we actually perform this work. However, I want to give you enough to start thinking about it and start asking around. So SIS operational and maintenance. Let's go through these ones. Do your operation and maintenance procedures include all routine actions which need to be carried out to maintain the as-designed functional safety of the SIS? And I put example in here, like adhering to proof test intervals defined by the SIL determination. What about, do your operational maintenance procedures include the information which needs to be maintained on device failures, proof test results, false trips, demand rates, and restore times on the SIS? Do your operational maintenance procedures require instruments to be rebuilt or replaced at the end of their useful life? That's a very important one. That's one I'd have to think most people have already. However, so many people will go by memory. So you have to ask the question. You got to see if you have something like this, And then also, do your operation and maintenance procedures require the use of computer tools, like we have SIL-STAT-TM to track the demands, the false trips, the failures, and even the maintenance performance? Are operators that work with the SIS in their area trained to ensure that they understand how the SIS functions and hazards being protected against? That one I would most likely say yes. Do you have a company matrix? Well, I would think that you guys have something to where to ensure that they are trained and they understand these functions. However, you never know, so you got to answer the question. Are your maintenance personnel trained as required to sustain full functional performance of the SIS? Hardware and software, and to have them trained to its targeted integrity, because as you know, the systems that you develop, whatever rating capability it is, it's going to be stringent as you go up from 1, 2, 3. And do you perform periodical proof tests using the written procedures? That's another one. Do you? I always go back to memory because that's what I see so often. Is people, yeah, I do that. Yeah, I know I can do that, but they can never find it. And that's what's very eye-opening, is to make sure people understand you got to write things down. All right, quickly going through this one. Are your scheduled proof tests done on scheduled? That was one I asked before. Are you always getting things done on schedule? Do they have to slip? And things do slip. We understand. A huge order could come through, or you'd have to create these systems right away, and things will slip. We understand that. But that's what makes people good to great, though. And that's why we want to make sure people understand the impact that they're causing. Do you maintain records of proof tests, including as-found results of the tests and inspections? And this is the one I said, it's eye-opener. A lot of people will run the proof test, and they think they had the results somewhere. Where do they document? I'm not sure. So this is asking you, do you actually maintain these records? And I know a lot of you back there, because I see who's on this call, you're shaking your head, yes. I do all these things, as an end user, I do this. And that's what we know. However, it's surprising when we visit other people. All right, let's go into system modification. All right, do you have procedures for modifications to that SIS? Does modification activities only begin with proper authorization? Do you maintain information for all challenges to the SIS, including a description of the change, a reason for the change, and approvals required for each change? Do you maintain information for all changes to the SIS, including tests used, to verify that the change was properly implemented and the SIS performs as required. And like I said, I'm going a little quicker here. So let's go into decommissioning. This is the last section here. And I do see I have a couple questions coming through, so thank you very much. Do you have procedures in place for decommissioning an SIS? Do you execute an analysis of the impact on functional safety as a result of the decommissioned activity? And do decommissioning activities begin with proper authorization? Or do you just have anybody that can do a decommissioning? Is it written down somewhere? How do you know that they have the proper authorization? And that's quickly, like I said, going through the different topics rather quickly. And as you went through these different topics, were you able to say always, often, never? That one doesn't really apply to me. And because that's what we're going to be able to do, is we're going to go through, we'd come on site, we would perform this type of work. Really, any certifying body, if you would like, could come on board, could ask these questions, could evaluate, could come up with a score, and in that weighted score system, it asks the points for each question and answer, and the result is evaluated per that those 5 ranges to provide that final concluding SSI number. And just for a recap on that number, it was right here, and we went through this already. You have it here. You can see the different levels. If you're perfect, almost perfect, good, medium, and none. And I do challenge people. Take this webinar, ask these questions. Let's see how far you get. Obviously, everyone's very busy, so it's going to be hard to implement something like this, or even to look into this. But that's why you can request an abbreviated questionnaire. You can have like us or any other certifying body come on board and ask these questions and see where do you stand, because the biggest thing, streaming back to the beginning of this webinar, is why are you having these failures if they're not systematic and these are truly random failures? How do you avoid this? How can you have better processes in place to avoid these random failures, to increase your probability of always being online, always not running into an issue, not having any type of catastrophes? Because the thing we're noticing is the people that fail to look into things like this, they're the ones having those issues. They're the ones having to have downtime, not making the money they need to be making because their systems are down. And so this is all the prevention, thinking ahead work that you could do to improve your system. So what's the impact? I know we touched on this a little bit, but here's just a quick screenshot of Excelentia, what you'll see in here. And you'll see from the bullet down there, results in Excelentia can vary by an entire skill level when SSI is changed from perfect to good. Okay, and this depends obviously on the product and other variables, but that's just to show the impact that, when you're looking at here, you can, by putting this factor in, sure, you have things in place, sure, you have the best system you built. However, if you're not following your procedures, if you're not documenting, if you're not changing these products when they need to be changed out, it's not doing you any good. And the question I see here in front of me, and it was actually asked this morning, so that's great, is people say, well, where is this in Excelentia? Well, we'll be out on Excelentia 4.0, which will be sometime in January, however, the SSI term. However, currently what's in there, there's something called MCI. But what we realized is this is the Maintenance Capability Index. And what we realized is there's a lot more involved than just maintenance. And that's where the Site Safety Index came from, is because there's more than just maintenance, so we had to create this new term to add in these other factors that weren't thought of before. And as technology grows, safety has to grow, and as the demand increases, we have to figure out how do we protect the people that are building these systems and that they're getting the most out of their buck, so to speak. Because if people are paying to certify, people are paying to create these new systems, we need to make sure that the systems that they're creating are exactly what they want. And that concludes my webinar for today. I just really wanted to get out the fact that this SSI term, the Site Safety Index, is extremely important. Many don't even know it exists. and that's why it's our job to make sure people do know that when we have new information that we can share with people, we express it and we tell you as soon as possible. Like I said, that white paper is out there. It was originally created back July of this year. I know we just updated it recently again. So look at it, enjoy it. I have everybody's email address from this morning and today's session, so I will make sure to send out an email to include that, and then also any questions that are asked, I'll make sure to send all the questions with the answers in an email as well to you, so that you have those as well with the slides too. The questions that I had, I see one or two here as well. One of the questions, looks like this guy, oh, he is an end user, and he wants to know, well, I already have his system built. Do I need to worry about this? He does. His system is a still capability of 2. And he wants to know, should he worry? Well, I have to ask the question, okay, you build a system. Are you following your procedures? Are you following your documentation? Do you need to worry about it? I have to go back and say yes. Or I could say, well, how did you rank when you were going through the questions that I talked about today? Do you feel as though you were perfect, yes, 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 or were you questioning it? Because that's the biggest thing is, sure, people are developing these systems, these SIL 2, SIL 3 capable systems, hooking up all their different parts, but they're only as good as that user. They're only as good as those procedures. And if each one of your plants that are creating these systems, if they're not doing it to these processes and procedures, you're really doing harm. And I mean, like I said, these products are only as good as that person and that system that they're put in. So you really need to focus and make sure that you're staying away from, you have protection against cybersecurity attacks. You have protection against, or some kind of notification system that when this product is coming end of life, to make sure you change it right away. These things are just, they can't be missed. And we're finding more and more that, people create these systems and then they kind of just wipe their hands clean. And you got to be careful. Where did the term SSI come from? That's a fair question. Actually, that was actually answered this morning as well. SSI, Site Safety Index. exida created this term. Why? Because there was a need. Nobody else could call it anything, so we decided to define it, and we are implementing this moving forward. It will be an excellencia because this is something that people are avoiding, they don't know about. So it is our job to make sure that we make this a reality to help people, to train people, to bring the awareness that this is something that is affecting your PFD average that you may not have known before. Okay, I believe those were all the questions I had. If you do think of some more questions, please, by all means, email me. You see my email address there at the bottom, tstewart@exida.com. I'd love to answer any questions you may have. All the questions that were asked today, I'll send over. We'll have our marketing department send the slides, and I'll personally make sure to send out the emails with the answers and also send a link or a location of where this white paper I keep talking about is located, okay? Thanks again, everybody. I appreciate it greatly. You guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Take care for now.